Bullies filmed a deaf elderly woman crying outside a diner. Then the bikers showed up. She stood outside the small roadside diner, shivering in the evening wind. Her hands trembled as she tried to communicate, signing desperately for help, but the trio of teenagers only laughed. Their phones were out. They were recording her tears, zooming in on her confusion, mocking the sounds she struggled to make. She couldn't hear their insults, but she could feel the cruelty inside the diner. Customers watched but looked away, pretending not to notice. The world had gotten used to ignoring moments like these, but fate had other plans. Because just a few feet away, at the gas station next door, a group of bikers in leather jackets were fueling up, men and women known for acting fast, speaking little, and protecting the ones who had no voice. And the moment one of them saw what the teens were doing, everything changed. The day had started like any other for Margaret, a 72-year-old deaf woman who lived alone in a tiny apartment on the edge of town. She rarely left home, but that day she gathered enough courage to walk to the diner for her favorite soup, the one her late husband used to share with her every Sunday. She carried a small notepad in her purse to communicate with people. Words written in shaky handwriting, soft apologies in every sentence, afraid she might be a burden. That was who she was, polite, quiet, invisible. But when she reached the diner door and tried to ask a young worker if the soup was still available, he didn't understand her signing. Before she could pull out her notepad, a group of 3 teens waiting outside noticed her struggle. They smirked. Then one lifted his phone. Margaret didn't understand why they were pointing their cameras at her. She thought maybe they were trying to help. She smiled weakly. That only made them laugh harder. They mocked her voice, the soft sounds she made while trying to speak. They mimicked her signing, twisting their hands in exaggerated motions. They circled her like she was a strange creature, not a human being. Someone inside whispered, "Just ignore it. They always do this." Another diner quietly shut the blinds. Outside, Margaret felt her heart drop. She tried to write something down, her fingers shaking. But one of the teens snatched her notepad and threw it on the ground. When she bent to pick it up, they filmed her again. Closer this time. And then something shifted in the air, a low rumble. Not thunder, engines. Heavy motorcycles rolled up to the gas pump next door, the kind that made people straighten up when they passed. The Iron Guardians, a biker group known for doing charity runs, protecting women traveling alone and stepping in when law enforcement was too slow. The tallest of them, a man with a braided gray beard named Reed, caught sight of Margaret on the ground. And the boys laughing, he paused, pulled off his helmet and stared. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. The other bikers followed his gaze. And that's when one of the teens made the biggest mistake of his life. He shoved Margaret lightly with his foot, just enough to make her fall back. 3 bikers dropped their helmets instantly. They weren't walking anymore, they were marching. Reed reached Margaret first. He crouched beside her, helping her stand. She looked terrified at first. Bikers weren't exactly the comforting type at a glance. But Reed gently placed a hand over his heart, then pointed to her. A simple gesture meaning, "Are you okay?" Her eyes softened. She nodded, signing slowly that she was all right. Reed watched her hands carefully, and to everyone's surprise, he signed back. Roughly, imperfectly, but enough that she understood. When he stood up, he turned toward the teens with a look that could freeze a wildfire. "What do you think you're doing?" he said. The teens weren't laughing anymore. Their phones lowered. Their bravado cracked. "It was just a joke." One stammered. "A joke," Reed repeated, stepping closer. "Is funny? This is bullying, cruelty, and you filmed it like entertainment." The other bikers formed a silent wall behind him, leather jackets, patches, steel-toed boots, unblinking eyes. One biker, Maria, picked up Margaret's notepad, brushed off the dirt, and handed it to her with a soft smile. Reed held out his hand to the teens. "Give me the phone." They hesitated. Maria stepped forward. Now, the phones were surrendered instantly. Reed scrolled through the video, the cruel laughter, the tears, the mocking gestures. His jaw tightened. He handed the phone to Margaret, letting her decide. She looked at the bullies, not with anger, but with hurt. Deep, old hurt. Hurt from a lifetime of being misunderstood. With trembling fingers, she deleted the video. Then she wrote something on her notepad and held it up. "Why?" The teens looked at the word for a long moment. One of them swallowed hard. We didn't think it mattered." Reed leaned in. "People like her matter more than you know. And you 3? You're going to fix this." He called the diner manager outside. He made the teens apologize properly. He made them read a message Margaret wrote, apologizing for their cruelty. Then he had them write down one good thing they would do for someone today, before they went home. And they did it. Because no one argued with the Iron Guardians. As the teens left, Reed turned back to Margaret. "Ma'am," he signed slowly. "You're safe." She touched her heart in gratitude. But the day wasn't over yet. The bikers had one more surprise for her. Reed led Margaret inside the diner, his hand hovering protectively at her back. People who had pretended not to see earlier now watched with guilt on their faces. The manager rushed over. I'm sorry. I should have stopped them." Margaret shook her head gently. She wasn't someone who blamed others easily. Maria placed a hand on the manager's shoulder. "What matters is what happens now." The bikers didn't take seats. They didn't order food. They escorted Margaret to the booth she always used to sit in with her husband. She ran her fingers across the tabletop, her throat tightening. Reed sat across from her. "You come here often?" He signed. She nodded. "Not lately," she wrote. "People get impatient when I try to communicate." Reed frowned. "Not anymore." He stood up and spoke loudly to the entire diner. "This woman comes here for comfort, peace, and food. From today on, you treat her like family. Anyone gives her trouble, they answer to us." The room fell silent. Then something beautiful happened. The waitress walked over and placed a bowl of hot soup in front of Margaret. "On the house," she whispered. "Anytime you come." A couple at a nearby table smiled warmly. A teenager who had watched everything earlier walked over shyly and placed a small flower on her table. The diner that had once ignored her now surrounded her with kindness. Margaret tried not to cry, but she couldn't help it. Tears fell, this time not from pain, but from feeling seen. Maria took a photo of her with the bikers, not to post online, not to go viral, but to give to Margaret as a memory. Reed bent down beside her and said softly, "Ma'am, don't ever think you're alone. People like us, we notice, we care. And we show up." Before leaving, he placed a small patch in her hand, the Iron Guardian's emblem for protection. He signed. Margaret clutched it to her chest. When the bikers walked out and revved their engines, every customer in the diner stood up, not out of fear, but out of respect. The teenagers outside never bullied anyone again, and Margaret? She returned to that diner every Sunday, head held high, knowing she had a family riding beside her. If this story touched your heart, make sure to follow, and share so more people see that kindness still exists and that standing up for the vulnerable can change everything.